Two big old books this week, and very out of print books, I should say, so don't expect to find these guys easily. Absolute League of Extraordinary Gentlemen Volume 1 and Volume 2 by Alan Moore and by Kevin O'Neill. Now, the reason that I'm doing this is because League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is one of my favourite comics, really, of all time. Alan Moore being one of my favourite authors, but Kevin O'Neill recently passed away, and I thought, what a perfect time to look back at my favourite Kevin O'Neill artwork and my favourite thing that he's done, and do a video on it and look back at this amazing artistic talent, I think. And what better format to look at the artwork of Kevin O'Neill, the Absolute format. Now, both books come in a slipcase. They are Absolute size, which we will get to in a bit, but they both come slightly different than normal Absolutes because it's actually two books in each slipcase. Both go the same type of format. Basically, one is the book itself and the 6-issue story arc. Both the 6-issue story arcs in each volume. But then they both come with the script book. Now, the script book is not exclusively scripts. There are some sketches and things going on in there as well. But we will get to the script books at the end. First and foremost, the main books. Now, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is one of those book titles that rewards the well-read and well kind of versed people in the world of literature more than anything, I think. There's not many books out there in the world that reward the reader for reading widely and reading kind of, Frankenstein and Dracula and all these, Victorian and early 20th century novels and James Bond books, all this type of thing. It very much rewards that because what it is it's set in this fictional, kind of almost steampunk world where all of these literature characters exist. They're all in reality. And so you get characters from Dracula, you get characters from King Solomon's Mine, from Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. H.G. Wells' work is really well entrenched into this story arc. And it starts off with a fictional character that was invented, I think, by Kevin O'Neill and Alan Moore, Champion Bond, and he's supposed to be a relative of James Bond. But he meets Wilhelmina Murray in the opening pages, and she has been hired to assemble a group of people because there's a mission that needs completing, but it needs a unique set of people with unique skills and talents to complete this mission. So she's been given this task, and she's full of mysteries herself because she's actually connected to the Dracula story. Now, I should say right off the bat that this book doesn't go out of its way to tell you the backstory of these characters. So take Wilhelmina Murray, for example. Her story is she's the wife of Jonathan Harker, I think, or Harker, I think, who is that main kind of protagonist and main character in Dracula, really. She obviously goes through lots of traumatic experiences in Bram Stoker's Dracula, but you don't get much of that. You get hints as to that backstory, but if you want the full backstory, you have to go and read Bram Stoker Dracula, because it doesn't give it here. It's almost introducing that character, telling you where she's from. But if you don't know where she's from, if you've never read Dracula, or if you've never heard of Wilhelmina Murray or anything like that, it doesn't matter. And that's why these books are fantastic, because they're fully accessible. The only things that you might kind of be a bit put off by is the fact that you don't get fully fleshed out backstories to the characters that are introduced. Because again, you'll only get them if you are well read. It rewards that well-read person and celebrates fiction writing, really, and fictional stories. So Wilhelmina goes out and she has already recruited one of the members of this group, and that's Captain Nemo, who again is from 20,000 Leagues Beneath the Sea in Mysterious Island. But they then go and find Alan Quatermain, the legend of Alan Quatermain, of this African hunter, tracker from the legend of King Solomon's Mine. But again, you really do not need to know any backstory at all, because the story here starts off with this group of people coming together, and you do find out their skills and their skill set, and you find out enough about them going forward to fully satisfy you. Again, you will only get more and appreciate these little Easter eggs and these little throwaway mentions of the story going on if you read all those back things, if you read tons of things. And I'm literally talking, if you've read hundreds of books, you will fully appreciate the amount of layered storytelling going on in your, or if you Google everything after. For example, they introduced Dupin, who is a famous detective who was written by Edgar Allan Poe, I think, and he is introduced as a detective helping them discover this weird doctor who turns out to be Dr. Jekyll. And again, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, they come into it, with Edward Hyde being a real interesting character in all this series, really. And then they recruit, the final recruit is the Invisible Man, who is playing havoc really in an all-girls school in England and having lots of fun by all accounts, in a very kind of Saint Trinian-esque school going on, where everything's very overly sexualised, but the Invisible Man is loving it. And when the group finally comes together, they are given this mysterious task of taking down a person in the Limehouse in London, a criminal mastermind that had been put in place in the East End of London, and they got to take him down because he's got this material that will give him a military advantage and give him an advantage over all of the world if he can exploit it correctly, and that is air travel and air power. And so they got to go into the Limehouse, take this mysterious criminal down and recover the stolen material that can give people access to flight and things like that. It's nowhere near as straightforward as that. The first 2 issues or so are recruiting and finding out more about the team, and then you go then into the main storyline of going into the East End, of finding out about these criminals. And then issue kind of 5 and 6 twist and turn, and lots of things happen to really change the story into something else. But it's a very epic journey. This group of people are from all different backgrounds, they've got all different skill sets. Some are really kind of damaged by their previous experiences, and some will be damaged by their experiences here, but certainly it is an amazing ride, and the artwork in it is phenomenal, I think, by Kevin O'Neill. It's full of style and interesting kind of shapes and designs, and his character design in general, I think, is fantastic. And again, it's one of those art styles that I think some people are going to love more than others, but in general, I absolutely love Kevin O'Neill's artwork. The colouring of the book, the artwork, the story pacing, everything is really on point with this first volume, I think. The second volume follows directly on from volume 1, and it tackles another kind of H.G. Wells story, really, because H.G. Wells is a massive influence on these first 2 volumes in particular, because almost the main plots of the story are taken from H.G. Wells novels, really. The second book firmly being taken from The War of the Worlds, and really kind of showcasing how our characters, after having an amazing battle and saving the world in many ways in the first volume, are thrown directly into War of the Worlds and being up against a power that they cannot overcome, that they are struggling to actually even conceive exists, and that is Martians coming down and attacking Earth. It starts off with John Carter of Mars. Again, you don't have to know the books it comes from or anything like that. You will appreciate more and get more Easter eggs and more intrigue from the story if you do. But if you don't, you're not constantly going, oh, who's this guy? Who's that guy? It's just a story that's developing, and you find out more and more as you go on. And so pretty much the entire first issue of this first story arc is all based on Mars and building up that kind of story arc of the Martians coming with their tripods and coming to Earth to devastate the planet and to make it their own. But this book very much kind of finds our group of characters feeling incredibly helpless and beaten down and against an enemy that they have no hope of beating and no chance of beating whatsoever. And so it's very much a different feel. The first one has almost, or at least it builds to a kind of almost pulp adventure kind of swashbuckling feel to it, you know, whereas this one feels quite dour, quite downplayed, and quite depressing in many ways because the characters literally are on the back foot so much. But obviously, they do rally round and do come to some kind of conclusion of sorts. But the majority of this is them very much on the back foot. There are some absolutely devastatingly brutal scenes in both of these books, particularly in volume 2, particularly involving Edward Hyde and another of the characters. Brutal scenes. There's also a lot of sex, a lot of violence. The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen series does go on far beyond these 2 volumes. But I genuinely kind of like to end the story at the end of this volume, because Black Dossier that follows it and the Century and other things, they diverted away from the things and the hearts of the story that I like more than anything, because clearly I like H.G. Wells and other bits of this story so much. At the end of each volume of the 6 issues as well, you will get a prose story. And this, if you have time, read it, because they flesh out the character and the world wonderfully. The second volume pretty much tells you about the New Traveller's Almanac, and it goes through tons and tons of different iterations, different stories that are interwoven into the world and the characters and all that. And it's great. It is a longer read because it's dense with text, but it is well worth it. It definitely is well worth it, I think. And volume 1 has my favourite, because Alan Quatermain in this book is very much a kind of recovering drug addict almost. And at the end of this book, you get Alan and the Sundred Veil. And this is Alan taking a very unique drug, which forces him to do some travelling in time and space and coming across people in other time machines and things like that, to be cryptic. But this is a really good story, I find, and it adds a lot to the main narrative of our main cast of characters, I think. After the prose bits at the back, you do get extras. You do get the full covers of each of the 6 issues and the bumper parts 1 and 2 issues. You get then these wonderfully thought out creations of colouring in, painting by numbers, board games, dot-to-dot, adverts. You even get, in volume 2, a fold-out board game, which I haven't used myself yet, but it is fabulous, I think. So then looking at the other book within these collection, the script books. Now the script books are packed with information. One of the things I really love is each kind of script page almost starts with a little sentence or line with Alan Moore talking directly to Kevin O'Neill. So take the first panel, for instance. He says, right, Kevin, here we go. Starch your collar and tighten your corset. We have a 6-panel page to open with. And then the text is just densely packed. What I do love is how they've got this kind of faded out image of the page that they're talking about in the background. So there's a nice bit of kind of page design going on there. The way the text is laid out, though, is really hard on the eye, because it's in this capital bold black lettering, and the way it's stretched across the page, it does kind of exhaust your eyes a bit, I think, after the few pages, or maybe that's just me. But either way, I have never been able to fully read this. I dip in and out, and when I find interesting pages in the main one, I wonder how the composition and how that kind of came about, and so I might turn directly to it, because it is marked out with pages and chapter breaks and panels. So if you see an interesting panel, you can kind of go directly to page 9, panel 3, and read about how the construction and the creation of that panel came about. There are sketches within this publication dotted around. This is far bigger and far larger than the actual volumes themselves. And yeah, it is mad how you kind of buy a book like this and pay a premium, and then you end up with so many extras that you never touch upon, because I'm not a massive fan of extras. But with this, I dip in and out. Both volumes, I kind of dip in and out. If I find an interesting panel, or if I want to find out how this bit happened there, then I'll jump in and jump out. But for me, they're not deal breakers, really. They both have this same construction with a faux leather finished and then a foiled image on the front of this symbol of Britannia and the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Obviously, size-wise, they're a little bit bigger than your omnibuses and all that, and they are sewn binding. Full glossy paper throughout. All the books come with dust jackets with full art that is pretty much reproduced on the trade paperback versions. And I will say that is these are crazy hard to get and really expensive, but you can get paperback omnibuses and hardback versions of these books, You can get individual trade paperbacks, you can get the individual issues. There's a range of different publications collecting this work, to be fair. Ultimately, when I revisit it, they're always really rewarding, fun, fast, pulpy, interesting stories that are just great. They really are some of my favourite stories, and it's such a shame that Kevin O'Neill has passed away, because we won't get to experience any more of his artwork. But ultimately, he has left this behind for everyone to appreciate forever, hopefully. But anyway, that's all I got to say about League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you on the next one.